I would be amazed if Clippy didn't pop up to suggest to him that we do it. And that's not the only moment of courage that we have seen. A doctor here in New York told his patients, I'm willing to go to jail to continue to provide your gender-affirming care. And in many cities, groups like these, Fighting for Immigrants, have coordinated responses to ICE raids. In fact, remember Trump's border czar Tom Homan taking Dr. Phil and a bunch of cameras out on raids? In Chicago, which he said would be ground zero for their mass deportation plans. Those raids were less successful than he wanted them to be. And he was pretty open about why.
I mean, censure seems to make it very difficult to arrest the criminals. For instance, Chicago, very well educated. They've been educated how to defy ICE, how to hide from ICE. And I've seen many paintings from many NGOs. Here's how you escape ICE from the rescue. Here's what you need to do.
doctors briefly went on strike, and the Middle East inched closer to all-out war, something one local station tried to fold into its broadcast with mixed results.
All right, we have some breaking news. Iran has launched a missile attack against Israel. The U.S. officially had warned Iran earlier to not launch any missiles or else there could be severe consequences. Again, we're going to continue to gather more information and follow this and provide that for you as soon as we can.
Also, switching gears here now. Today, National Taco Day falls on the first Tuesday of October. You may not know this. Tamara Berg recently competed in a taco eating contest in Jim Boy Tacos.
Yeah, you really are what you eat, aren't you, Tamara?
Absolutely. And you guys know, and if you follow me, especially on social media, my passion runs deep for tacos.
Excellent. That is exactly what I want from local news. Save the globally significant events for later. I want to see a journalism major with a giant taco on her head look directly into the camera and say, and I quote, "My passion runs deep for tacos." Just imagine other news delivered that way. From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Switching gears, you probably already knew this about me, but I'm the biggest hot dog hound around. Meanwhile, there was the vice presidential debate on Tuesday in this very building. In fact, this studio served as the post-debate spin room, meaning that you are all breathing in the same air particles that were once inside Don Jr.'s nose and mouth. So, if anyone in this audience wakes up tomorrow feeling like you have a sore throat or a total disappointment to your father, that is probably why. In contrast to the presidential debate, Wars and Farms seemed at pains to be courteous to one another, something many commentators saw as a plus.
The debate was so polite, it's being called a night of Midwest nice. Despite their differences, they still managed to be civil.
It was so refreshing to see these two guys there. They were so polite to one another, even at one
I
point.
liked it. This was a civil debate. It almost seemed like they didn't like each other.
In many ways, that's what the country would say if they want war. Reproductive rights in storing vehicles for Nicola Coughlan. But also, why do manners matter here? The debate included discussions on how to carry out mass deportations and whether women should have control over their own bodies. Etiquette is kind of beside the point. It's like reading a ransom note and going, this cursing is just so lovely. Look at the capital Y in "You have 24 hours before he dies." There are still some people who will raise rights. And complimenting Vance on his civil tone is a little hard to take given how he spent the rest of his week. Just days before the debate, he took part in an event called the Courage Tour, hosted by Lance Bornow, a prominent far-right Christian nationalist, and someone who's talked about Kamala Harris like this.
She can look presidential, and that's, we'll go to this later, that's the seduction, what I would say is witchcraft. That's the manipulation of imagery that creates an impression contrary to the truth, but it seduces you into seeing it. So that spirit.
I got on this, I got on the company
is operating on her and through her.
Okay, first, Kamala Harris isn't the one who's been relentlessly promoting witchcraft. You're thinking of Universal's marketing department. And this man clearly shouldn't be commenting on the election. He should be standing in a tent in 1856, selling children mercury tonics he claims will let them talk to ghosts. Honestly, it feels like the question that lower banner should really be asking there is, hold on, is this wacky bitch for real? And it gets worse because at the event in Pennsylvania, we'll now explain, Vance had been scheduled to be elsewhere, but managed to change his plans, and you're not going to believe the logic behind that.
As you know, we have Vice President candidate J.D. Vance coming. And I'll be honest with you, I take that as a direct
Looking good now?
hand of God,
I put it down, I'll get them up.
because he just came together in a certain way. Pittsburgh wasn't even on the map. It was supposed to be North Carolina. And God switched it that fast.
Yeah, apparently, God made sure police floods brought J.D. Vance to that event. And look, I'm not your fault. I'm being a Christian. I was evidently the only comedian in the world who did not meet the fucking Pope this year. But if you believe in a God who'd unleash a devastating hurricane just so J.D. Vance could spend an afternoon outside Pittsburgh, your God sounds like an arsehole. And during Vance's appearance at the event, he seemed more than happy to play to the crowd.
The American education system used to be the envy of the world, rich or poor alike. We believe in this country that every person deserves a quality education. Well, now we've got American children who can't add 5 plus 5, but they can't tell you that there are 87 different genders.
What are you talking about? That is obviously bigoted bullshit. If any kids are missing out on their addition lessons, it's for the exact same reason they always have, because they're way too distracted by the class house. How are kids supposed to focus on their math worksheet when Meatball over here is sprinting on his wheel like he's on coke, rolling around chaotically in a toilet paper tube, and Panic stuck his chinks with a month's supply of carrot chunks? He looks like Marlon Brando in The Godfather, and those kids are supposed to focus on math? It's not happening. But that is who Vance actually is. And at the end of the debate, he let a glimpse of that come through when the subject turned to the last election and he offered this revisionist history.
Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. Did he lose the 2020 election? Tim, I'm focused on the future. That is a damning non-answer.
Yeah, it is. I'm focused on the future is one of the most generic store-brand fuckboy deflections there is. It's no wonder Tim Walz dropped the World War there like it's in elementary, because I'm focused on the future is what you say when you want to change the subject. If not, you just answer the question. I'll show you. John, have you ever murdered someone? No, I haven't. Have you ever been mistaken for Penn Badgley? No, I haven't. Have you ever been forcibly removed from a Red cafe for insisting that the frog was coming on to you? Look, I'm focused on the future. I'm moving forward. And that answer was especially glaring, considering the day after the debate, a judge unsealed Special Prosecutor Jack Smith a 165-page brief in the election fraud case against Trump, reminding us yet again of the ridiculous steps he took to avoid leaving office.
The brief presents the fullest picture yet of Smith's case that Trump knew he lost, but lied to the American people anyway. Prosecutors claim they spoke to one White House staffer who said he overheard Trump tell family members it doesn't matter if you won or lost the election. You still have to fight like hell.
I'm certainly thinking you could possibly overhear if you were here, including orders. importance of road safety,
Wait,
but I'm
wait,
going to do that
wait,
anyway
wait,
because
wait,
when else have we got this?
Just play small. Pull in. This how I done solve everything.
There was a child
Guys,
in the
let's go.
car.
We need something right now. What? You relax.
9 lives, children only
This
one
thing I don't know.
live that life.
I'm
Not
sending
sending
you
to
a
a
lot.
car seat. No one wants a child to become a memory.
Well, that was a lot. I'd almost forgotten all those weird characters from Cats, like Angelica Splat, Tony, Zazzle Skunk, Old Colostomy, Skittlegizz, Nipple Twister, and Mr. Bumblefuck. I don't remember their real names, but I'm pretty sure that's close enough. And let me just say this, that musical is an abomination. If there is ever a day that Andrew Lloyd Webber has no haters, that means that I am dead, and so, by the way, is Patty LaPone. But of course, that ad is completely right. You don't want someone driving unsafely to claim the life of a child. A child. A child. But the truth is, lots of stops aren't about safety at all. In fact, many are so-called pretextual stops, basically using a minor traffic violation to detain you while they investigate for further evidence of crimes like illegal guns or drugs. And they have a lot of leeway to do that. Because when it comes to searching your house, the Fourth Amendment generally requires police to get a warrant approved by a judge before moving. But when it comes to cars, the courts decided that because cars can't drive away, requiring a warrant is impractical. So over the years, the Supreme Court's given police wide discretion in how a traffic stop is handled. And in 1996, in Wren versus the US, it finally legalized pretextual stop, unanimously ruled that the constitutional reasonableness of the stop did not depend on the actual motivations of the individual officers involved. Essentially, as long as police have evidence of a traffic violation, however minor, they can use a simple stop to start the criminal investigation. And what this means in practice is that a lot of stops now amount to just shaking people down to see what crimes fall out. One of the popular manuals for training police in traffic investigations flat out states criminal control in large part is a numbers game, and you need a lot of contacts to find out relatively few felony offenders you're most interested in. One former officer has even admitted, we fish. If I follow a car for 5 minutes, I can always find one or two moving violations. And that is true. There are so many laws on the books, a cop can always find a reason to pull someone over.
Experts say finding the initial reason to pull someone over is easy. That became quickly apparent during an afternoon with an officer of the Oakland, California Police Department.
Specific to me that drove by, as a bumper that's a vehicle code violation. All lights must work, right? So his top brake light does not work, so we stop him for that.
Right, and it's not just loose bumpers. There are tons of minor infractions on the books. Massachusetts has a list of traffic violations that's 25 pages long. Florida's is 32 pages. And in New York City, the list is 135 pages long, and no driver is going to be familiar with every single rule. No one is reading that whole thing, not even me, and I have resting reads traffic codes for pleasure face. And some of the laws around the country are truly absurd. Some states, for instance, have laws that prohibit drivers from hanging objects from their rearview mirrors, including air fresheners and rosary beads. Incidentally, a dangling air freshener was a justification for pulling over Dante Wright. But many officers will insist that pretextual stops are absolutely essential to fighting crime. Here's a police chief explaining stopping someone as something as innocuous as an air freshener actually makes total sense.
Like my 32 years of law enforcement, I've seen many minor traffic violations lead to big arrests. Wanted felons, fugitives from justice, murder suspects.
But that is still petty. It is petty to pull someone over for not wanting their car to smell like farts and a yogurt that they know is back there somewhere but cannot find. And when pressed for evidence of pretextual stops being an effective crime-fighting tool, cops will constantly bring up that this is how a state trooper caught Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh by stopping him for driving with no license plate. It's a case that now holds mythic status among police officers, which is a little weird because one, he was only caught after the bombing, which to be honest was a little more like a miss than a hit. And two, the reason they were able to arrest him was because McVeigh was carrying a concealed weapon, something which is not actually illegal in Oklahoma anymore. So if we've all got our dicks up for hanging on to laws that caught Timothy McVeigh, let's go ahead and add gun control to that pile, shall we? But the truth is, Research has consistently shown pretextual stops do very little to make us safe. A Philadelphia study found that out of 300,000 stops, only 0.67% recovered any sort of contraband, which could include weed, and just 0.17% recovered any weapon. So when you measure the success rate of pretextual stops with any metric other than percentage of Timothy McVeigh's corpse, they're a tremendous waste of time. Also, for what it's worth, in some smaller municipalities, police aren't just looking for crimes, they're looking for money. There are towns around the country that have resorted to ramping up ticketing where enduring budgetary shortfalls. Basically, as soon as their balance sheet gets worse, magically it seems, so do the driving skills of the people in their community. We've talked before about the practice of using municipal violations to fund local government in places like Ferguson, Missouri, and Brookside, Alabama. And people can still wind up being stopped, ticketed, and even imprisoned for inability to pay. Because in 17 states, minor traffic violations are arrestable offences that come with a criminal record. And even in states where that is not the case, people can still end up in jail because many places can lock you up for failure to pay fines.
This was on
how traffic fines completely spiral into a dire situation.
How many times have you been...
Yeah, when you just put one say, but don't want it. No, I don't put it down.
But it's for them.
10 was the minimum number of times I've been locked up. So, take that number. I've been stopped no less than 20 times. You don't have money to pay, you go to court. And the court will tell you court costs, ticket, plus fees, that was love, you now owe $200. You have $200 to pay. No. All right, put you on a payment plan. So, every month, come see us and pay this on the 21st. If not, issue you on the 27th. Then you pay on 9. So let's say you don't make that payment. What do you do? If you have the resources, you can pay. But most people don't have the resources, so you just run and catch me if you can.
How many warrants did you rack up?
At one point in time, I was on 11 different municipalities.
11 different municipalities. How did you live with that?
Carefully.
Yeah, that seems about right. Asking how do you live with 11 warrants is a bit like asking how do you hold a newborn baby or how do you give a porcupine a handjob. The answer is fucking carefully. And the cost of these stops is borne overwhelmingly by communities of colour, and particularly black drivers. One analysis by Massachusetts County found that police pull over black drivers at more than twice the rate of white drivers for non-traffic safety violations. Even large ones will obscure this by simply refusing to track the racial makeup of who they stop and search, while others will gather the data but fail to connect the dots as to what it means. Just watch this police official in New Jersey cite data of his own before having his case destroyed with a pretty simple statistic.
I pulled our motor vehicle stop data by race this morning. We did an interview, we did it in real time, and we had 1,814 motor vehicle stops in the news so far, and 576 are involved, 573
Anybody can watch this. Baby, it's gonna go home.
every flight study that we investigate why.
Yeah, but what you just told me is really stark, because 60% of the population of Bloomfield is white, and only about 20% of the population is black. So how do you account for that?
Like I said before, it's basically where our police officers are deployed.
Right. It's about where your officers are deployed. You are so close to figuring it out. You just need to see the obvious conclusion. It's like watching a fourth grader do a multiplication problem on the blackboard, get all the way to the end and then write the answer, Woody Allen is innocent. No, what? How did you get to that? The answer's staring you right in the face, you idiot! And look, racial profiling through traffic stops is obviously nothing new. From the Jim Crow era south, all the way through the 80s, when cops were trained using a drug courier profile, which had them looking for supposedly telltale traits like dreadlocks and wearing lots of gold jewellery, which is profiling both black people and I guess, very occasionally, white girls named Branch who make their own tampons. But she's going to be fine, her dad is a senator. And that was even before that Supreme Court case that I mentioned earlier, which raised the bar to prove cases of racial bias. Because to do that now, you need to establish intent, which is obviously hard, because no cop is going to explicitly admit they pulled you over because of your race. And that has led courts to allow some pretty explicit profiling. One federal judge even rejected claims of racial intent, often enough to justify pulling over a black driver by saying, one can never tell with you people. And if that doesn't prove racial intent, I'm not sure what does. Even more recently, just listen to the officer who pulled over Philando Castillo for a broken tail light, by the way, explaining on the radio with their hand why he was about to do that.
I'm gonna stop a car. For that reason, I'm pulling over. The driver looks more like one of our suspects. Just because of the lights and all this.
Holy shit! It is hard to argue you're not profiling someone when you're pulling them over because of their face's literal profile. Castillo was apparently pulled over in and around St. Paul, Minnesota, 46 times, amassing more than $5,000 in fines. And his mother is pretty clear about what was happening to him.
Why do you think your son was stopped so many times?
Nobody can be that unfair. And nobody is that horrible of a driver. It wasn't he ran a stop sign or he was in a car accident. It's none of that. It's what they call now pretext stop.
Yeah, she's just stating the obvious there. There is no other interpretation. It's not some big, unsolvable mystery like what happened to Amelia Earhart or where do all your socks go when you wash them or what the fuck do these two talk about? Questions no one has an answer to. I'm not saying I'm not happy for them. I'm happy for them. I'm happy for them. I'm saying I just don't know what their dinner table conversation is like, and I don't think you do either. But we're happy for them. I'm happy for them. The point is, the stakes here are incredibly high and infuriating. Cops will sometimes glibly remind drivers of that. Just watch this interaction between a Florida officer and a driver he saw as uncooperative.
29-year-old Gerard Nicholas was on his way to work when he was pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt. Let's show you how it all went down.
Go to jail today? I'm going to walk, man. No, you're not going to walk. I'm going to walk. You're going to give me your driver's license. Give me your driver's license, registration, and insurance. If not, you will not be going to work today. Simple thing, man. This is how you guys get killed out here, man. Registration and insurance. Say that again?
Yeah, say that again. Because there is a lot to object to in that exchange, but let's zero in on the passivity of the word get killed. As if the shooting is going to be something that just happened, as opposed to an action that officer would be choosing to take. And one major reason why cops may do this scratchy, jumpy, jawny stuff is they're actively taught to fear them. Trainers and tactical guides often claim that vehicle stops account for more killings of officers than almost any other type of interaction. Police training can reinforce all of this. Just last year, some British chemical in New Jersey, a significant portion of which focused on traffic investigations, and also featured this bold motivational speech.
I love what the fuck I do for a living. There's nothing else I'm good at. I love violence, I love fighting, I love shooting, and I fucking love freedom. It wasn't that long ago that we were drinking out of the schools of our enemies. Like, you know, I'm gonna fucking murder this guy. Then I'm gonna take his head. Then I'm gonna cut his head in half. And then I'm gonna boom it on his skull. And then I'm gonna shoot the shit out of that skull. Fucking rad, right?
Difference first, no, not fucking rad. Second, I do believe you that there is nothing else you're good at. And least importantly, why are you wearing a shirt covered in elegant birds? You're talking like a deranged serial killer, but dressed like you're at brunch in West Palm Beach. That shirt doesn't remotely match your persona, which, from what I can tell, is what if someone fed Milo Ventimiglia nothing but raw meat and trauma? That conference was run by a company called Street Cop Training, whose logo apparently features an eagle dry humping a police badge. The company estimates that it trains between 25 and 30,000 officers nationwide every year. In fact, between 2020 and 2023, public agencies in at least 46 states provided direct payment to Street Cop Training. That conference you just saw was attended by nearly 1,000 officers from around the country who, in addition to hearing speeches, also given what was called a reasonable suspicion factors checklist, a list of behaviours supposedly indicating when a driver is trying to cover up a more serious crime. It advises looking out for things like passengers on their cell phone, usually texting during a stop, and not always but often yawning. The checklist also says it's suspicious if a driver looks away from the police car while passing it, but also if they look at it. Leaving the option of closing your eyes while driving past a police car, which feels bad. And you know who would agree with that? Those road safety freaks from Cats, you know, like Weasel, Crunklebutt, Jumble Scat, Lickety Flop, Jazzle Banger, Jingle Sphincter, and of course, Old Tinkle Shit. Again, I don't remember their names, and I'm not willing to learn. All in all, what was taught at that conference was so egregious. New Jersey's Office of the State Comptroller found that a number of the attacks were unjustifiably harassing and unconstitutional. And for all the fear pumped into cops, I should note that while it can, of course, be a dangerous job, studies have shown that the dangers of stops have been vastly inflated, with an officer's chance of being killed during a stop estimated at somewhere between 1 in 3.6 million and 1 in 6.5 million. As one DA who was called for police reform has said, the risk is statistically negligible but existentially amplified. And it is notable that during certain encounters, cops were easily able to have less of a hair trigger. Well, that very Florida got lectured on having a temerity to talk back to an officer. Just watch this cop deal with a driver immediately doing a lot more than that.
Sir, go back into your car. I'll be with you in a second. You're going to check the registration on this plate soon, mister.
Wow. That guy exited the car with full righteous bitch energy. He delivered that line with a conviction of Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman. Big mistake. Big. Huge. That guy, by the way, was a county judge. And when the cop found that out after checking his registration, this is how their interaction ended.
Have a good day, Judge. You bet.
You bet. Responding to have a good day with you bet instead of you too is a level of petty self-assuredness I will never attain. When that man orders at a restaurant and waiters tell him good choice, he says, I know. And incidentally, you might assume that that is Prove me wrong, Judge. Prove me wrong. And for black drivers, even when traffic stops don't result in a shooting or an arrest or even a fine, there can still be real harm from the steady wear and tear that comes from dehumanizing interactions. See what happened to Taylor, a teenager in 2018 was driving home after grabbing a slushie and chips at a gas station. He was pulled over for supposedly making too wide a turn, subjected to questioning about whether he had drugs in the car, which he didn't, and was then ordered to step outside where he was handcuffed and frisked while police searched his vehicle. And just watch how, when a cop tries to blame him for the stop, Lee calls him on his bullshit.
If you don't mind me asking, why do you have, like, this negative view towards the police? What's the deal? What's ever happened in your life personally where you're like, you can give me a good explanation? Really?
Like when we graduated, I got a good job. Right. I got graduated with 3 full right now in college, but I ain't never been sick in my life. Been out all day.
So what's the problem? Like, why are we in this situation? We didn't do it.
Yeah, of course it's that cop's fault. He's playing dumb while creating the problem. It'd be like me asking you, why are you so bummed out right now? As if I haven't been professionally bumming you out for the past 25 minutes. The cop who pulled Lee over later testified that he believed he was armed because of the interaction with him and seeing him display the nervousness, which is clearly ridiculous, and thankfully, a judge later sided with Lee, ruling that nervousness alone is not a sufficient basis on which to articulate reasonable suspicion, a legal rationale that experts refer to as a fucking duh. That cop also tried to justify his actions by mentioning the presence of a small souvenir movable slug of bat in the car, which he claimed could have been used as a weapon, but you should know that the bat in question was one of these, weighing only 6 ounces. I'm sorry, but that is not long enough to be a weapon. It's barely long enough to be one of Pinocchio's nose boners. As that stop continued, another cop arrived, and so did Lee's mother, who asked him why her son was being treated this way, and he explained they were actually part of a serious crime unit, and essentially admitted that doing bullshit traffic stops was a key part of their job.
So what we do, one of the aspects of what we do is we focus on traffic stops, okay? Right now, right now, the city has been plagued by guns.
I don't want the history. I'm telling you why my family.
When I say right now, it's not history. I'm telling you what we're doing right now, okay? And I'm trying to just let you understand, but it's like you don't want to hear it. I'm getting to that. I know all of that. I'm getting to that. I'm telling you why your son is being stopped and why he's out of the car, but you're not allowing me to do that. So it's a traffic infraction that he's stopping.
In the face of something utterly enraging, because I bet we could find a bullshit reason to pull your son over. Just isn't the flex that cop seems to think it is. It's actually kind of the whole problem here. In fact, the cop who originally detained him actually told me at one point, we're going to stop 30 more people after you. Showing that stop wasn't about one bad interaction, it was a bad system working exactly as designed. So, what do we do? Well, I would argue the first thing we should do is incredibly simple, and that's to just stop doing pretextual stops. And one big step toward that would be eliminating non-safety related traffic stops. And I'm not the only one saying this. In cities around the country, activists have pushed for this change. In Ann Arbor, Michigan, this city councilwoman pushed to reduce the use of pretextual stops, in part out of fear for her sons. And last year, that law actually...
We are trying to set an example about what policing could look like.
The cracked windshield, tinted windows, loud exhaust, broken taillights, or expired registration or plates, and other non-safety related issues would become no longer grounds for a stop. Stops involving speeding, reckless driving, and other serious violations would remain priority.
This frees up the police to be working on, those types of primarily offenses.
Exactly. The law gives police more time to investigate actual dangerous driving, as well as other Michigan-related crimes, which I have to assume are like dish theft, or maybe secretly shitting in a lake. I'm not sure what criminals do in Michigan, but cops could have more time to stop whatever it is that's happening there. And promising changes have been implemented elsewhere too. A few years ago, Philadelphia became the first major city to ban police from stopping drivers for certain low-level traffic violations. And after just 8 months with the law in place, stops associated with those violations dropped by more than half, meaning nearly 12,000 fewer black drivers were stopped. And while that is great, it should probably be only the beginning. We should also decriminalise minor traffic offences and stop locking people up to enforce fines and fees. Experts also told us that one major step would be for states to require police both keep and make public data on all their traffic stops, including the race of who they're stopping and what actions they're taking, to make it easier to see and address patterns that might emerge. And we should do that, because it is frankly fucking incredible that it's not already happening. And look, again, I am not saying you don't stop people who are clearly driving dangerously. You can and absolutely should do that. But that's clearly not the only way traffic stops are being used right now. And doing fewer of them for bullshit reasons should be a pretty easy sell. If they pay those 50% of police officers, just so happens to reduce the number of cops that we need, what a happy accident that would be.
An accident? An accident? An accident? What a happy accident!
Yes! There are so many of you. The point is, we have to stop the abusive practices associated with traffic stops. It's so obvious, even a child can see it.
A child?
A child? A child! Yes. Well said. And if we can do this, then hopefully someday in the near future, fear of traffic stops will be nothing but a distant, haunting memory! Exactly. Those are shows. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Good night. Dancing with the Stars.
For the final dance of the night, our Bachelor star will tango to the hair metal classic Rock You Like a Hurricane. You know that these songs were chosen weeks in advance for the devastating weather event.
Yeah, that's not right. You know, I'm sure the song that was decided weeks in advance. It's also the middle of hurricane season right now. It's one of those three unforeseeable things like you have to come out and say, the world. Also, the week before this morning's tragic mass bomb strangling. Please stay strong. Strong, 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 strong. Milton's damage was extensive and irreversible. But happily, it was as dire as many had predicted. And interestingly, the run-up to the storm provided a reminder of a really widely used method called storm surveillance.
Waffle House is still monitoring the storm impacts. FEMA officials use the Waffle House Index as an unofficial metric during disasters.
We call it the Waffle House Index, and it's very reliable.
The index works as an unofficial indicator to locals of the severity of an impending storm based on if their nearest Waffle House is closed or not.
It's true, there is something called a Waffle House Index. It is joke to have something so important conveyed in terms of Waffle House. It's like finding out NORAD relies on the Oshkosh-Bagosh nuclear threat level. Red overalls, everyone, get underground. The Waffle House Index actually originated with the government around 20 years ago. This is illustrated when we're going into a disaster zone. If you get there and the Waffle House is closed, that's really bad. That's where you go to work. And that's partly because the companies have a fanatical devotion to staying open. Over years, they've seen business skyrocket at restaurants that open quickly after hurricanes. So they've embraced a business strategy centered around keeping their restaurants operable during and after a disaster. And they know people take this seriously. Because what they have is features so much like this. So, just above normal waffle pushing ads like this, reading, I have a lot on my plate right now. That's the most jarring juxtaposition of content since Sunny D once seemed to threaten to commit suicide. By the way, the Twitter account for Satan replied to that, I feel you, Sunny D, my friend. To which, and this is true, Sunny D replied, thank you, Satan. Twitter used to be really good. And look, I can talk about the good subtext in the idea that Americans place more trust in restaurant chains than their own governments, to the fact that same chain has somehow remade our employees work during natural disasters into a branding opportunity. But I'm going to choose to go from the back of the houses and somehow become a little bit of a store. 11 struggle tales that lit up, which is wild. Coming to a place that otherwise embodies total chaos. From these frequent wars, to the staggering variations. There is too much going on here, and I'm not sure I'm enjoying any of it. There was also their chaotic decision to stop their jukeboxes with food-related knockoff songs like this. Makes sense. Shelly Baby is a song about Frankie Valli being horny for a girl, and this is basically that, but raisins. Horny for raisins, which not for nothing sounds like it could be a believable title of a Joe Biden memoir. The point is, what else combines chaos with order, and nothing exemplifies that more than the bonkers method they've developed for line cooks to keep track of orders. Because they don't use simple methods like servers writing it down or putting it in a computer system. They do something far more comfortable, which is fully shown on tape.
We ever start on the plate, right? We use Joe Patrick, Smart West everything. So, this is a quick rundown. Overlay all the way to the left, put the medium in the middle, bring the well all the way on this way over here. Scramble it on this bottom, down to the south, put it up on top. With the Joe Patrick, it's a little bit like this. This is white toast, wheat toast. Use the apple butter to raisin toast. Put a butter just on the grill line. That's the waffle. Cook it over, put the pecan waffle. Sometimes people put a blue jelly packet on top. That's blueberry waffle.
Oh, fuck off! Not you, man, in this video. start on a plate, I thought makes sense. Food goes on a plate. Take me on your journey. But as soon as he said we use jelly packets to mark most of everything, I'm out. I don't have space in my life for jelly choreography. I can't learn that code. I have a family. Jelly packet down to the south, scrambled? What? And then, if you flip the jelly up, it's white. No flip, it's wheat. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking me? I consider myself a smart man. The glasses. But the only thing he said that kind of makes sense there is that blue jelly equals blueberry. Now, would I have ordered a blueberry waffle? You have to put butter on the grill line, right side up, blue jelly on top. Not in a million years, not after several hits. I feel but I'm having a big deal. Explain the emojis to me. Lapstack means dark stack. Blonde haircut means haircut. Brunette haircut means physics code word. And shrimp means haircut. Why are you not getting that? And it gets even more complicated. Here's an official training video explaining how to convey a sandwich order.
Here, you can see I've put 2 pickle slices in the number 3 position, which tells me this is a bacon sandwich. If I add a slice of cheese to the plate, I know this is a bacon cheese sandwich. To make this a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich, I'll add this right side up mayo packet to the right side of the plate. Don't let this mayo pack confuse you. As long as you see 2 pickles on the plate, you know this is a sandwich.
Sorry, but if it's cool with you, I am going to let that mayo packet confuse me because I feel insane right now. I was confused when you said 2 pickled slices in the number 3 position means bacon sandwich. You could have said Vince Vaughn at a Christie on 4th of July means cheese omelette, and it would have had the exact same effect on me because what the actual fuck am I looking at there? That is a plate with 2 new pickle slices, a class single, and an unopened mayo packet. That is not a form of communication. It looks like dinner at the fire festival. If you work at Waffle House, you might be a genius. Because I think the YouTube comments below that video said it best. I'm a 911 dispatcher. I deal with genuine life or death situations. I would rather take a shots fired call than attempt to understand whatever the fuck is happening here. The point is, in a world that seems to be spiraling out of control, it seems there are at least a few things that we can still count on. Waffle House will stay open to a genuinely irresponsible extent. Jelly means eggs. If you put butter, container down, right side up, you're getting a waffle, and this song is never ever going to leave your fucking head now. And now it's this.
And now, local news tries to make sense of Vanderbilt fans throwing their goalpost into a river.
These football fans were actually happy as they threw their own football stadium goalpost in the Cumberland River. They were celebrating Vanderbilt University's win over Alabama. The students marched several miles and then tossed the goalpost into the Cumberland River. Whoops. Oh yeah, I don't know why they did that, but okay.
Goalpost keep brave down Broadway.
So dumb. What's today? You know what you do when you get off the place?
I don't get the gold in the river, but okay. Thanks for that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Good times for them.
Right. I mean, lots of different things. I mean, this is stuff. This is destruction of property.
Have you been in Broadway before? Because if you go down there and when people are excited about something, it's like, it's never. People dress up in the Cumberland all the time. Cheeseburgers, furniture, it's
I can't.
Hurry up! Our main story tonight is about vote. The only adult endeavour that gives out stickers, which is a shame. There really should be more of them. I voted is nice, but I'm also like, I went to the dentist, or I did my taxes, or I jogged, or full disclosure, I didn't go to the dentist. I made an appointment for the dentist, but that isn't nothing. That said, getting a sticker for voting is certainly welcome. And as we've mentioned before, if you live in Michigan, you might get a really good one this year.
Troy Jane Heinrich is the artist behind this creation. Actually, one of 9 stickers that Michigan voters will receive after casting their ballot.
I want it to be a symbol of powerfulness. I want people to be proud of it when they're voting. When they actually get the stickers, like, yay, I just voted. And, you know, it's pretty encouraging.
Yes, it is. I mean, family bonds. In fact, it'd be a shame if they didn't ensure voting day with complimentary werewolf swag. I cannot believe it took nearly 250 years for a young Michigan genius to solve that obvious flaw in our democracy. This election is inexplicably close. The average of polls in the 7 key battleground states all show the candidate within 1 or 2 points. And if you heard that and didn't shit yourself, congratulations, you just earned a sticker for that. Clearly, we don't know what's ahead on election night, though I can confidently predict a few things. First, a little... Nate Silver peas upside down. And finally, if Trump loses, he will not concede gracefully. He's already said he will only accept the result if it's a fair and legal and good election. And he's been laying the groundwork to cry foul if he loses.
The only thing they do well, they cheat. Their policies are no good, their government is no good, their management is no good, but they cheat like nobody can cheat. They cheat. They cheated in the last election, and they're going to cheat in this election. Look, if we can keep the cheating down to a minimum, because these people cheat. They cheat like hell. If we can keep it down to a minimum, we win easily. We have to vote, and we have to make sure that we stop them from cheating, because they cheat like dogs.
Look, I get that he's just trying to rile up his base there, but I will not sit idly by while he slanders dogs. Hey dogs, look at me. You are beautiful, you are special, and you matter. As for cats, you don't need my validation, and you know it. Trump and his campaign have co-opted the phrase election interference to refer to pretty much anything from the multiple indictments against him to the Fed's decision to cut interest rates. And Trump at one point even posted election interference, never surrender with his own mugshot. And for the record, that is a terrible mugshot. Johnny Cash, that's how you do it. Laid back cool. Frank Sinatra, my, that guy fucks, am I right, Roman? Trump's, on the other hand, looks like the photographer arguing he could shit through standing. The point is, we need to be ready for the possibility that the mess that happened last time could happen again, especially because Trump hasn't faced any real consequences for it. He's even bragged that he's become more popular in the wake of his indictment.
It's so crazy that my homeowners there, whoever has been indicted for interfering with presidential election when you have any right to do it.
Yeah, it is fucking crazy. When the Watergate tapes came out, Nixon had to resign in disgrace. If that happened today, he'd probably be able to release them all as an audio book and win a fucking Grammy. But it's more than just talk. Trump and his supporters have taken active steps to undermine the upcoming election. And given it's now just over 3 weeks away, let's talk about some of the attempts they've made to subvert this election. And we're going to focus on a few areas. The lies they've told to undermine confidence in the process, the steps they've taken to sow chaos in the voter rolls, and the groundwork they've laid to turn the post-election period into a nightmare. And let's start by briefly revisiting what happened last time. Because you probably remember the biggest headline. Trump refusing to concede, which ultimately led to January 6th. But so much other weird shit happened that you may have blocked out, like when Giuliani insisted Will Smith's late father voted, or in the theory spread that the Italian defense contractor all these ballots in Arizona. This outside observer noted they were looking for the weirdest possible something.
The accusations of 40,000 barrels of floating into Arizona and stuck into the farm. Okay? It came from the southeast part of the world, Asia. Okay? And what they're doing is to find out if there's bamboo in the paper.
Cyber ninjas tried to prove foreign interference by looking for bamboo in the ballot paper, which feels like the plot of a racist, straight-to-screaming political thriller where Steven Seagal saved President James Woods from Washington. The last election was incredibly dull, but let's not forget, it was also incredibly stupid. And all this happened despite a joint statement from Federal Election Infrastructure officials calling it the most secure election in American history. Now, the good news is there have been some positive developments. Since then, the press passes happened to us and they explicitly prevent the Vice President from just throwing out votes they don't like and Trump claims he intends to do. Trump's not incumbent this time, so he can't do things like pressure the DOJ to legitimize claims of fraud. And finally, the election deniers who the chief election officers in swing states in 2022 all lost, and that is great. Unfortunately, it is also basically the end of the good news, because the first claims of election fraud
country, and many from prisons and many from mental institutions, and they want to give them votes. A lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. They are working full time to sign these people, many of them murderers, to vote so they can cheat their election.
Given the fact that this theory is hateful racism, how does it even make sense? You really think people would flee their homes, travel under dangerous conditions to enter this country just to vote? It's like assuming someone would break into a bank just so they could free the pens from their chains. Why would they do that? It's just not worth the risk. But Trump got a long in pushing this claim. He has support from conservative think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, the same group that brought you Project 2025, which started something called the Oversight. This is what the Conservatives got a lot of play in right-wing circles.
The apartment complex Elliott in Norfolk, Georgia, is occupied primarily by non-citizens. We visited the complex to ask them two questions. Are you a citizen? And are you registered to vote? Shockingly, 14% of respondents admitted to being non-citizens registered to vote.
We come from a company that is dedicated to register Hispanic people so they can vote on presidential. Are you already registered? You already voted. You already voted? Yes. Are you a citizen or? No. Have you already been registered or? Are you a citizen or?
Now, that video got boosted by Elon Musk because it's extremely disturbing and it went viral, despite the fact the Oversight Project itself admitted it was unable to find the people they talked to on the state voter rolls, and state investigators found no evidence that any of the 7 people on that tape had ever registered to vote. Meanwhile, one of the women featured confirmed she wasn't registered to vote and only said she was because she just wanted them to go away. And no shit, I don't care who is at the door, I don't want to talk to you. It could be me coming from the future with a dire necessary warning. I'm not listening, I'm just nodding and I'm slowly closing the door as we're talking. And yet, they claim that if the 14% hit rate they found held true, statewide it would equate to over 47,000 non-citizens registered to vote in Georgia. And look, obviously, the idea that there are thousands of non-citizens voting is ridiculous. One thing, when Georgia looked back over 25 years of its elections, it found that of the 1,600 people who tried to register to vote and whose citizenship could not be verified, none of them had cast ballots. Plus, an analysis of the Heritage Foundation's own nationwide database of 1,500 proven instances of voter fraud found just 68 documented cases of non-citizens voting, going all the way back to the 1980s, with just 10 involving people living in the country illegally. 10 people in the last 4 decades. That is statistically nothing. More people die from hippo attacks every year. Just something fun to think about next time you're fawning over pictures of Moon Day. She could kill you, and she would kill you, and happily. And that video isn't even the weirdest lie about non-citizens to keep up the ranks. Maria Bartiromo also spotted this dude.
What about all these immigrants at these DMV offices, where people are going to try to go get a license, they can't get an appointment at the DMV because it's jam-packed with illegals? The person that spoke to me about this weekend, identified several places in Texas where he couldn't get in. The first one was in Weatherford. A massive line of immigrants getting licenses. They had a tent and a table outside the front door of the DMV registering them to vote. It was all the signs were in Spanish. There was an obvious Democrat operation on this vote, he said.
Okay, we'll get into why that is nonsense in a second, but I'm genuinely curious about the person who saw a massive line at the DMV, and their instinct was, this must be illegals registering to vote, and not the DMV functioning like it has since the dawn of time. Do they blame all common inconveniences on immigration? Oh shit, I burned my mouth on this coffee. The illegals must be brewing it extra hot to burn our tongues into silence. And while you might instinctively know that claim is bullshit, it's even dumber than you think. As Bartiromo explained, her source was a friend of a friend's wife. Something that didn't stop her happily regurgitating it on the news. If you like that, you can find well-sourced stories like it on Forward with your drunkest aunt, Sundays at 10 on Fox Business. Unsurprisingly, those claims were quickly debunked. For one thing, Weatherford, Texas doesn't have a DMV. And And in the place that you can get a driver's license there, the Department of Public Safety, no such tents or tables were set up outside the office all that week. And even if this had happened, which it didn't, as the local GOP chair explained, all voter registrations are uploaded to the Texas Secretary of State's database to verify applicants' eligibility to vote, including citizenship. And not only have there been no recent instances of ineligible individuals attempting to register in that county, there had only been 2 in the last 15 years. And yet, just 2 days after Bartolome spewed that on national TV, Texas AG Ken Paxton announced an investigation into reports that organizations may be illegally registering non-citizens to vote. And that is actually a bit of a pattern for Paxton. He can loudly start voter fraud investigations, and even when they amount to nothing, he'll have created the impression something is there. In fact, the same day he announced he was looking into Bartolome's claims, his office announced a separate investigation into allegations of election fraud and vote harvesting targeting members of LULAC, the nation's oldest and largest Latino civil rights organisation. And some of its members, like this woman, were even subjects of an early morning raid.
Sisters and celebrities.
87-year-old Lydia Martinez, who says she is LULAC's longest-serving volunteer, had her home raided as part of a voter fraud investigation by the Texas Attorney General. Martinez said up to 8 officers showed up at her home last Tuesday morning. They took her phone, her laptop, questioned her for hours, and made her wait outside.
I said, let me get dressed. And he, God's sake.
What were you wearing?
My nightgown, and I had all these policemen around me. It was embarrassing, humiliating. I was so angry. It was horrible.
They pulled an 87-year-old great-grandmother out of her home in her nightgown, which is appalling. Paxton should know, as we all do, a nightgown is one of the worst things to haul a grandma out in. Right after, well, obviously a coffin, but then there's a U-haul, an anaconda, and finally, a negative t-shirt reading, "Shave my balls to." I think that's the worst one. And while thankfully, a federal judge recently shut down that investigation, saying it was unconstitutional, the fact is, lies and bullshit investigations have really happened. 51% of adults in upcoming elections, including 83% of Republicans. And some aren't waiting for the Ken Paxtons of the world to take action. Which brings us to the fact there are now well-funded groups actively trying to, in their words, clean up the voter rolls. Here's the head of one of them, the Election Integrity Network, explaining the general idea.
I realized that we needed to focus on this threat of illegal voting in November, because I absolutely believe that that is how they are planning to try to steal the election this year. The only way we're going to be able to stop this is by having citizen action, looking at the DMV, looking at the voter rolls in your county, looking at the voter rolls, watching, and basically creating a national neighborhood watch to try to find these pockets of non-citizens that are getting added to the rolls.
First, let's agree, every Rumble show looks like a high school AP club member interviewing the assistant principal after a school-wide Heelys ban. But also, a national neighborhood watch? It's not great. The model they want to emulate is basically, what if racial profiling was someone's hobby? That woman is a conservative activist named Cleta Mitchell. For the past 3 years, members of her group have, among other things, been scrutinising voter rolls, looking for anyone they think shouldn't be on there. And they haven't always been shy about what they're looking for. In one Zoom session, an activist from the Detroit area suggested searching rolls for certain types of surnames, saying that, I think it's unfortunate, but sometimes the only way you can find out is to look for ethnic names. And thank goodness they prefaced that with, I think it's unfortunate. For a minute there, I thought that instruction to do racism was coming from a bad person. But it doesn't stop there. Groups like Mitchell are now working with computer programs like these that automate the process of finding voters to challenge. For instance, this one trawls through everything from public voter registration data to business records to change of address databases to obituaries to find people to challenge because they may have died, moved, or be otherwise ineligible. Users can then make potentially thousands of challenges to voter eligibility with just a few clicks and send them to local election officials. And while they often think that they're helping election boards do their jobs, officials will tell you being on the receiving end of an avalanche of challenges is exhausting, especially as they're usually just replicating work that's already happening.
There's been days where I've received a couple thousand. I've had
each of those voters up one by one. Roughly 75-80% of the names they give me, we had already dealt with.
And the rest of the names?
Well, you would pitch them anyway. There's safeguards built into the whole system for any issue you can dream of.
Exactly. They're basically just creating busy work for that man who frankly does not need that. He works in a giant warehouse full of suitcases that gets so little natural light. The only place he can go on vacation is on his shirt. That man needs a beach and Mai Tai under all the vigilante vote police to leave him the fuck alone. Most of these citizen-led challenges are either redundant, like he just said, or flawed, because they're completely reliant on public databases that may contain errors without having access to the protected personal information available to election officials. That is why programs like these can often generate monstrosity like which is flagging voters who share the same name and birthday but are actually different people. And getting flagged can be intensely frustrating. Just listen to this man, who lives in the same county where our exhausted official works.
I have been voting here for 2 decades. As you can see, I am real. I am here. I am talking to you.
If you're wondering why Daniel Moss is defending his existence, it's because of this list.
What's the first one? That's my last one?
Of thousands of voter registrations in Denton County being challenged as ineligible.
Finding out that I'm on some sort of hit list of people who should be voted. I was super soft.
Daniel Moss's challenge came from someone he doesn't even know.
I want to say this. Nancy?
Nancy lives in the same county and single-handedly sent in thousands of challenges this year.
Nancy sends me something every day.
I bet she does. You can hear the exhaustion in his voice there. Nancy sends me something every day. And she'll keep sending me things until I'm a husk of the husk I am now. And a gentle breeze carries me away to some beautiful place where there are no more Nancys. The point is, just a handful of people can cause a huge amount of problems. Last year in Waterford, Michigan, a county clerk improperly cut more than 1,000 voters from their votes in response to challenges from one 79-year-old resident who believed the last election was stolen. And challenges have been particularly intense in the swing state of Georgia, where because of a new state law there, anyone can now bring an unlimited number of challenges against anyone in their county, which then have to be heard within 10 business days. Since that bill was passed, more than 180,000 citizen challenges have been filed, with the vast majority by just 6 people, which is ridiculous. A group sowing that much chaos should not be able to fit inside the Titan submersible, although since they can, I'd actually be happy to pay for their trip. I hear it's beautiful down there, guys. Georgia voters have been challenged for stupid reasons like tiny mismatches between their mailing address and their address. This man showed up at a meeting last spring after he was challenged because his address was mistakenly recorded as North Pine Drive Drive instead of just North Pine Drive. This woman had an even more infuriating story.
My wife was challenged. I guess standing the same address for 2011.
Voters like LaKendra Graham. She says she lived on Confederate Avenue in Atlanta,
Yo,
the
say.
name of which the city changed with
As
great
y'all see.
fanfare to United
Based on the
Avenue.
come when we went money time there, money time and they don't see nobody, so I gotta do my thing myself, you know?
It's a waste of my time because
Yeah.
I'm here when I have other things to do. I have a job.
Yeah, that's a total waste of her time, which could frankly be better spent on working, or shopping, or figuring out why the fuck that street name wasn't changed any earlier than 2019. And while the vast majority of these challenges fail,
Once money
they
involved,
have
you'll see people
insurance. In the words of one attorney, they're more likely to disenfranchise or intimidate or confuse voters than they are to actually turn up people ineligible to vote, which is both infuriating and one might suspect kind of the point here. And while so far we've been looking at preemptive strikes ahead of the election, there's one final strand of fuckery I want to mention, whose main effects will only be seen in the days following November 5th. And that is some of the changes made to boards that certify elections. Because what I mentioned earlier, that deniers who ran for chief election officer in swing states lost, there are still significant numbers of them on the state and local level. One analysis found that in these 6 key swing states, there were nearly 70 pro-Trump election
Once money in the vibe, you don't see nobody.
county election officials. And maybe the most striking shift has been in Georgia, where, uniquely among swing states, Republicans are in charge of the governorship, the House and the Senate. And they have used that power decisively to, among other things, reshape the 5-member state elections board. These 3 Trump-friendly members have now been installed. All of them have questioned the result of the 2020 election. And Trump loved them so much, he even called them out by name at a rally.
3 members. Janice Johnson, Rick Jeffries, and Janelle King. 3 people. A little pitbull fighting for honesty, transparency, and victory. They're fighting. Are they here? Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? Thank you. What a job. Thank you.
Wow. The fact that Trump is shouting them out like they're Easter birthday boy or girl at Chuck E. Cheese is not a great sign. Nor is it great that one of them, Rick Jeffries, even told the Trump campaign advisor that if they win in November, he wants to join their administration, saying, if you all can't figure out who you want to be the EPA director for the Southeast, I'd like to have it. Which might be the first time I've heard of political corruption having a voice that screams, no worries if not. Now, I have to tell you, all 3 have pushed back on the insinuations they're working for Trump, with one saying she's faced character assassination, media murder, and lawfare lynching. And to get ahead of your question, yes, it was the old white lady who said that. But in August and September, incredibly late in this election cycle, the board passed a bunch of new rules that will make it much easier to sow doubt in the certification process. One of them requires a full hand count of ballots in each precinct to take place either the night of the election or the next day, and which must be done by just 3 individuals per precinct. It might sound reasonable to you, but as experts have explained, that has the potential to cause chaos.
I brought with me 1,872 pages of paper representing what a stack of ballots could look like on a busy counting day. And busier, larger precincts may have even more than this number. If I were to hand this stack of paper to 3 random people in this room, especially at the end of a long voting day, and ask them to arrive at the same total number, do you think that's feasible? Counting large numbers of anything one by one is an incredibly tedious process and not one humans are well equipped for. People doing a hand count are going to make mistakes, which can then be exploited to spread lies and sow further distrust in our elections and our election officials.
Yeah, of course, if you handed 3 exhausted people that stack of paper and told them to have the exact same number by morning, you're not guaranteed the same answer. At best, you get a scenario that is give most people a panic attack and the count an instant orgasm. Dozens of election officials have said a hand count of all the ballots would be physically impossible in all but the smallest counties. But the thing is, that rule might trigger another new one that bars counties from certifying the election until officials can review an investigation of every precinct with inconsistent totals. And it gives county boards the power to exclude entire precincts from the vote totals if they think they're fraudulent, which is absolutely wild. And that might be a real problem, given some local election officials are fucking nuts. For instance, this election chair in Georgia's Spalding County tweeted just 3 days after January 6th, this mess of offensive conspiracy theories, including the hashtag Biden will never be president and Biden is a pedo. That is not something you want in power just thrown out of office. And on top of that, yet another new rule empowers county election board members to conduct reasonable inquiry into allegations of voting irregularities without setting deadlines for how long they might last or crucially define what a reasonable inquiry even means. And that is something one of those new Trump-friendly appointees is really concerned.
Why do you guys define regulation? I mean, you guys made the rule.
Should we just define regulation? I thought we thought that most.
I mean, I'm not understanding election.
No. Well, I guess I'm asking is more of a So, I didn't think we would have to write the definition of reasonable within the rule, but if that's the case, we'll post what the definition of reasonable is.
But they still haven't done that, even though early in-person voting in Georgia starts this week. And that is a problem because you need to define the word reasonable. It's a subjective term like funny or interesting. Those words mean something different to everyone. I personally prove that every Sunday night. I'm doing it right now. Experts say that reasonable inquiry rule could allow rogue election officials to drag inquiries past certification deadlines. And while courts are currently hearing challenges to these rules, if they allow them, one potential end result is local officials in just a handful of rural counties could exclude enough votes in Georgia to affect the outcome of the presidential race. And when you take all of this together, the lies about immigrants voting, the mass voter challenges, and the introduction of new processes to slow down and question vote counts. It seems depressingly likely we're about to see a storm of bullshit just like last time, and there are a few things that we should probably be ready for. First, unless there is an absolute landslide, we're unlikely to know the outcome of the election on November 5th. And when it comes to Georgia, if Harris wins narrowly there, we'll almost certainly see legal battles stretching into December or beyond, and which could eventually end up in front of these guys, which is obviously completely reassuring to everybody. And all the while, Trump will try and exploit any delay or uncertainty, unless that is he wins outright, in which case he'll suddenly insist he triumphed over a rigged system. So that is what we can expect. What can we do? Well, you can, and I hate saying this as much as you probably hate hearing it, make a plan to vote and help others do the same. Since the closer the race is, the easier it will be for Trump to sow bullshit. You should check to make sure that your voter registration is current. You can use this website to find links to your state's voter registration verification tools. Vote early if you can, to ensure that if there's any issue with your registration, you can clear it up before election day. And if you vote by mail, you can find a tracking tool for your ballot at this website below. But beyond that, it is going to be vital to be resilient against the storm of toxic nonsense that Trump and his allies will try and stir up. It will go on for months and be stupider than you can even imagine right now. So stupid that someone you know, love, or are related to, and those are three very different things, might even think that there is something to it. But the key thing to remember here is that as chaotic as the last election was, in the end, our guardrails did hold. And we're going to need to make sure that they hold up again. And if we can do that, then, and only then, will we all deserve the single greatest sticker ever designed. Trump's making big, scary promises, but he did that in 2016 too, and he broke a lot of them.